Hello everyone! Welcome back to me attempting to be professional and somewhat entertaining for around 10 minutes straight. We'll be reviewing another tablet today. This time we'll be taking a look at GAOMON's PD2200 pen display. Alongside my review, I'll be giving you all a closer look at how I animate my videos, since I've had quite a few of you ask me how I make them. Before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to say first and foremost that this isn't a tutorial designed for those who are just starting out with animation. This will mainly be me explaining my own process while a time-lapse plays in the background. That's not to say that some of the techniques I'll be sharing can't be helpful to beginners, but I won't be going into detail about the basics of animation or anything like that. Some of the tips I give also may only apply to certain programs. I'm not too sure since I've only ever used Adobe Animate, so I would keep that in mind. Before all of that though, we've got a tablet to review. I did not record myself unboxing it this time round, so I'll just quickly go over everything that comes in the package. First, and arguably most important, we've got the tablet itself. This bad boy has a 21.5-inch display with 92% NTSC, 8 touch keys, 8,192 levels of pen pressure, and an already attached adjustable stand. Best of all, it is fully laminated. I don't have to deal with the possibility of applying the screen protector improperly again. Hooray! Next up is the tablet pen, which has 60-degree tilt support and does not need to be recharged like the one for the PD2200. There's also the pen stand, which contains replacement nibs, a 2-finger drawing glove, and last but not least, the cables needed to power the tablet. This includes a power cable, a USB cord, and an HDMI cord. With that said, it's time to share my thoughts and experiences with this tablet. Let's start out with the screen itself. I honestly wasn't too sure how I'd feel about the size at first, but now that I've gotten used to it, I don't think I'd want to go back to the smaller model. I know this is mostly based on personal preference and available desk space, but for me, it's nice to have that extra space to work and zoom in on the little details. The image itself is high quality, and the colors are mostly accurate after a bit of adjusting. The lamination gives it a nice feel when you're drawing, way better than drawing directly on the glass, and it vastly reduces glare when under direct light. There is one prominent issue I've noticed, however. It's a little hard to explain, but I'll try my best to make it as clear as I can. There appears to be this sort of ghost-like effect whenever there's movement on the screen, whether I'm watching an animation or moving the canvas around while I'm drawing. It's a lot more noticeable with some things, not so much with others, sometimes not at all. I've noticed that, for example, it's more visible with 2D art that involves dark colors, and less visible when it comes to 3D or IRL content. I'm not completely sure why it does this, but it is a little problematic whenever I'm trying to preview something I've animated. Fortunately, I can just look up at my monitor to get a better view, but if you plan on purchasing this model and using it as your only monitor, you may be in a bit of trouble. Moving on, touch keys. Truthfully, I'm not sure if I prefer them over the normal buttons the other model has, but I will say a couple of things about them. One, I like the little images on the keys that show you which one serves which function. Although you cannot change the image if you assign a new function to it, they still help me remember the order of my shortcuts. Second, while there is something nice about only needing to touch the keys instead of pressing them, I find that I am constantly touching them without meaning to. I don't think it helps that I'm sweeping fur off my screen almost daily because of these lovely little angels right here, which only adds to the accidental shortcut use. Again, this is mainly based on personal preference. It's up to you to decide what you need out of your tablet. A few more things I want to mention before I move on. The pen. While I didn't mind the fact that I needed to charge my pen before, it's pretty nice not having to worry about it anymore. There's also very little parallax, aka there's not a lot of distance between the tip of the pen and your cursor, which is really nice. The cables. I think they made the right decision separating the cables instead of keeping the 3-in-1 style they had before. If you break one of the cables, you only need to replace that cable. If the 3-in-1 cable gets janked up, you're forced to replace the whole thing. And the price. It's hard to deny the affordability of this tablet. especially when you compare it to similar models by different companies. While this tablet sits at approximately $460 USD, a Wacom and Huion tablet of the same size costs $1,200 and $800 respectively. That price tag doesn't even include the $90 coupon that you'll find on the Amazon listing. You won't easily find a tablet like this for that price. All in all, this is a really nice tablet for the price. Despite its setbacks, I've really enjoyed using it and can recommend it to those who want a larger display but may be limited by their budget. Alright, now it's time to talk about animation. To ensure I'm not rambling all over the place, I'm going to do my best to follow my process from start to end. First and foremost, we've got the sketching phase. Usually, I'll sketch out all the major keyframes I need before I move forward. I say usually because there are times where I slightly deviate from that path. It depends a lot on how complex a movement I'm going for. If it's relatively simple, I'll use less keyframes. If it involves a bigger, more elaborate motion, I'll include some rough in-betweens to guide me when I begin lining. For this animation in particular, I tried something new. I doodled a little stick figure performing the movement I had in mind. It made it a lot easier to figure out the timing as well as the placement of everything when I sketched. Next up is the lining phase. This is where things get interesting. I have found that the easiest way for me to achieve the movements I'm looking for without getting overwhelmed is by animating one feature at a time. For example, I will animate the head on its own. No face, no fur, no ears, etc. I'll often choose something like the head or body first because no matter the speed of the movement, it tends to change shape the least, unlike the hair or the ears, which flow and change depending on the scenario. I'll then add each feature individually on separate layers using different colors so that things don't get too muddled. This allows me to make changes to certain parts of the line art without affecting everything else. Once I'm happy with the results, I erase any line art that's overlapping, change everything to a single color, and merge all the layers together. Repeat the process a few more times, and boom, the line art's done! Before I move on to coloring, however, I do have a couple of tips that relate to my lining process. Again, these may or may not only apply to Adobe Animate, but I figure that they might be helpful to a few of you out there. First off, if you don't want to go through each individual frame to recolor your line art, there's a much faster way of doing it. If you press Alt-Shift-E, you'll enable a feature that allows you to edit multiple frames at once. It can be a little visually jarring, especially if you have a lot of unique frames, but with this method, you can select everything and simply change it all to the color of your choosing. Once I discovered that this was a thing, that aspect of my process became a lot less painful. Tip number 2. Once you've merged all your layers, you'll notice that each frame has become a symbol. If you don't want that, you can use the previous tip I brought up to select all of your frames, right-click your line art, and choose Break Apart. This returns them back to their original state. Now comes the coloring phase. For this, I use the pencil tool to outline the character's design. The reason I use this tool in particular is because I can select said outline on its own without interfering with the rest of my line work. This allows me to paste it onto other frames so that I don't have to draw the same pattern over and over, making it more consistent overall. Once everything is colored, I use the handy trick I mentioned earlier to select all of my frames and remove only the lines I made with the pencil tool. Now, keep in mind, I line my animations with the brush tool. If you line yours with the pencil tool, you won't be able to use the exact same tactic I use to remove your coloring lines without deleting the rest of your line work. That doesn't mean you can't still color this way, you'll just have to go through each individual frame to select and remove the extra lines. Unless there's a way to do it more efficiently that I'm unaware of, which is very possible. I use this same tactic to add a bit of shading to my animations as well, if I still have the energy by the time I'm done with the coloring, that is. Before I wrap up, here are a couple of quick tips that I'd like to mention. First, you see how I'm adjusting my line work here? I do this by holding down Control and dragging my mouse to smooth out my lines and sharpen the corners of the hair and fur. For me at least, it made cleaning up a lot easier once I got used to it. Second, although I mainly do frame by frame, that doesn't mean that every drawing in my animation is unique. I'll often duplicate a frame I've already made and adjust it slightly, giving my animation more flow without having to make an entirely new frame. Finally, parenting layers. This is something I learned recently that is especially helpful when you're tweening. Let's say you've got a head on one layer and a body on another. Normally, if you try to move the body, the head will just stay in place because it's on a different layer. If you want the head to move along with it, you can make the body layer the parent of the head layer like so. This allows you to tween them separately while keeping them connected. And that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I hope what I said was somewhat understandable. I tried my best to explain my processes and techniques in the least confusing way possible. Hopefully this video is helpful to someone out there. A big thank you to GAOMON for sending me another tablet to review, and to anyone who made it this far into the video. As a little reward, here is a recording of me spilling water all over my tablet pen in front of my friends. Thanks for watching!
You can do barrels, you can do a forest.
Ah, no, I spilled water everywhere!
Oh no!
Clean it up!
And
Victor!
no,
Clean it up!
I
I got this recorded.